That was amazing to watch that with you and hear you laughing. What a great experience. I normally would want to ask a million questions, and I want to, but I know there's probably a lot of people in the audience that want to ask you guys things, so I'm going to open up to the audience. Anyone who has any questions, let's do this. Don't be shy. Way up at the top.
I was just wondering if at any point in rewatching it kind of as an outside viewer, as almost an audience member, was there anything that you... Oh, just kidding. Hello. I don't know if you heard any of that, but maybe you can hear it now.
The acoustics are actually amazing.
It's a beautiful theater. Was there anything that you kind of found that you learned anew about yourself or your drag or your own experiences that in watching yourself kind of react and talk about it that you didn't expect?
I said this at the premiere in Seattle, and I'll say it again. The segment with my dad talking about his reaction to my coming out, it's not a conversation he and I have ever had. Like, I never came out to him. My mom told him I was gay, and my mom told him eventually I was a drag queen. And then one day, you know, like, that was just common knowledge. So, like, I never had a conversation with him. He never showed me any kind of reaction. And so it's amazing because I knew everything was fine because nothing changed between he and I, but I'd never heard the words that he said until I got to see this film. And I think just kind of the relationship with me and my dad, I don't know if I ever would have heard those words if it hadn't been for this film.
And you weren't there when we shot the interview, so it was totally new to you when you saw it on screen.
Yeah, and then a second thing that I just realized tonight, because I think the first time I watched it I was very, very self-conscious, and I still am. I slapped Alex on the leg because there's this scene where my dad was like suiting up to get on his motorcycle and putting on his gloves and his helmet while I'm putting on my lipstick and my wig, and there's something, I don't know, it's like, it's funny because it's these narrative moments where someone's talking that's amazing, but then it's also the way Alex presents it to us that allows us to kind of see things through his observational eye, and that's why it's cool to have someone, like if I did this, it would all just be me singing in front of a camera, you know?
Right here.
I don't think we'd ever see RuPaul do a documentary like this, probably for obvious reasons, but or any of the other queens. How do you find the courage to share so much of your life on screen?
Well, I think a big part of it is that the first time Alex approached me with this idea was a year and a half before I had auditioned for Drag Race. And I guess it was easy back then to think about doing this because I didn't think anyone would really fucking see it, you know? It aired in Seattle for a project he was working on for a film festival.
Are you talking about the first episode?
Yeah. And then after Drag Race, you know, I had already done so much in front of the whole wide world on Drag Race that I was like, at least doing something like this with Alex, with someone I really trust and someone I've known and been really good friends with for so long, it felt way easier than like going on Drag Race and letting a bunch of strangers edit my story. Now I'm letting one of my best friends edit basically the same story but from a different point of view. And in no way do we bash Drag Race because it was one of the best experiences of my life. And in no way does it say that like this wasn't like my favorite thing that's ever happened. But it also shows you the work and the sacrifice that goes into it. And I think that's what makes it more universal. It's not just a story about you know, an ugly duckling who gets her prince at the end. You know, it's a story about someone who worked their ass off.
Right here in the middle.
Hello. For Alex, would you consider doing another documentary with a different queen for contrast, or is Jinx the only girl for you?
I've thought about doing other documentaries about queens, but I feel like I've just been filming drag queens for like the past 5 years. I kind of need, like, maybe I'll try something different. No, yeah, I love working with drag queens, and I don't really have any plans for another documentary with anybody else.
He's a go with the flow kind of guy.
Right here.
I'm pretty loud. I don't need a mic. Don't worry. Can y'all hear me? Great. I know that you talk a lot about your influences for your character, particularly Meryl Streep. What I'm wondering is, do you think there's room for another character? Do you think you're ever going to want to retire Jinx and be somebody else?
I have a few characters already. Like the original show that I do with my music partner, Major Scales, I play my character, Kitty Witless. So I've always, Jinx was the first drag character I created. I think of her as the base of my tree, basically, and all the other characters are little branches off of it. And so I feel like every character has to start at Jinkx Monsoon and then kind of branches out and becomes someone else. And I think Jinx is just, the reason that is because Jinx is the feminine me. It's my female self. She's not just me in drag. She's like an alternate personality. And so for me to become any other female character, I have to first step into Jinx and then let Jinx take over and turn into that character. But I have had inklings for a while about like, what if I took a new character, like really big scale or something, or like what if I introduce a new character on Drag Race someday or something. And right now I'm kicking around the ideas of a Russian themed, but now I won't do it because Katya. I was gonna do a Russian themed drag queen named Pretty Pissed Off. And now I think I'm planning ahead for when I turn a little bit older. I want to have a very staunch, conservative, tightly wound, bitchy Hillary Clinton type woman, and her name would be Madam President. Yes.
Next question. Right there.
How does it feel to have sort of so much mainstream exposure? I sort of seen like in the last couple of years, drag has really become mainstream in America, in Canada. How does that feel? How does that, living through that and being part of it?
I think it's a double-edged sword, and I know that sounds cliche, but there's so many wonderful things. Like when I started drag 12 years ago, even at age 15 and pretty much throughout the years of drag until Drag Race became the phenomenon it is today, I've experienced a lot of interior homophobia towards drag queens in the gay community. And so there was a stigma kind of around being a drag queen that I was hoping to break down a little bit. And Drag Race helped break it down in a big, big way. But in a kind of like a backlash of it becoming so widely accepted, it's also becoming kind of dulled down and simplified, and it's being made universal in ways that are kind of robbing the richness of the culture. And now we've got people who, learn like their drag history through Drag Race, which is constantly trying to remind people that there's a whole long history about drag and about the queer and civil rights movements that we've all fought for the last, however fucking long. But Drag Race you can't do it all. And so there's a lot of people who watch Drag Race and think they're an expert on drag. And I try to remind people that just makes you an expert on Drag Race, because that's like it's a glimpse into drag, but it is not the end all be all.
Right here.
Were you worried about people seeing the scenes where you're smoking a bowl or something like that? The more drag is exposed to audiences, the more I've seen queens be accused of being intoxicated on stage. I feel that's the curse of more and more people tuning into a form of art. So I was wondering how you feel.
Well, we had many times in early iterations of Drag Becomes Him. I never would let it happen. And then it became legal in Washington, so I was like, well, if I'm in a state where it's legal, then whatever, right? So, but the thing I feel, and the more and more I talk about this subject publicly, the more passionate I become about this, because for so long, alcohol has just been a huge part of drag culture. It's a huge part of gay culture, specifically gay male culture. And it's pushed on us from the second we turn 21 or the second we get a fake ID. It's just kind of pushed on us as like this is part of your culture, whether you want it or not. And it's a rite of passage, and it's an excuse, and it's like all this shit. And drag queens are constantly and me, Jinkx Monsoon, the character, I make jokes about being drunk all the time because I've made a decision a long time ago that Jinkx Monsoon is drunk all the time, but that doesn't mean I'm always drunk all the time. And what I truly believe is that I can smoke a joint and still be a lovely, charismatic, wonderful person, just maybe a little bit more mellow. But if I have fucking 5 shots and I'm blackout drunk and I'm acting like a beast, like I'm sure you've all seen drag queens act like, I would rather be a mellow, chill stoner who's like still acting cool than like someone who's fucking throwing a fit in the middle of the dance floor, you know? So I'm just like, if we wanna, I don't care about showing my weed use now and being open about it because so many drag queens are so open about being fucking lushes, so why not, you know?
Way at the top there.
So you have your famous mantra, water off a duck's back, or alcohol off a duck's back, depending on what kind of drag queen you are. Where did that come from? I know there was a scene in the movie where your dad used it. Did it come from your father? Did you give it to your father? Like,
no, it's actually a very simple story, and it doesn't have a huge lineage or anything, but I believe in the power of mantras because I believe in the power of positive thought, and, you know, don't get into the whole culty